welcome back to Shortstop Jackson on Real Estate and Money. Here for another episode here today on multiple units versus single units. So we're going to talk about the pluses and minuses of owning, let's say, 4 units or more, 4 to 24 units, versus owning a single house or a condo or even a duplex. We're going to put the duplex and the single together, and we're going to call anything more than a duplex multiple units for purposes of this talk today. All right, so let's get started. So with multiple units, it's much more complicated, really on all levels when it comes to the management of the property. Everything has to be extremely consistent. Let's say that a tenant hasn't paid the rent after 3 days, 4 days, 6 days, there's a holiday weekend, they're 7 days late on paying their rent. So when it comes to multiple units, you have to be so consistent. Whatever the late notice time period is, whether it's 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, whatever it is, that late notice has to be there. Even if it's your friend, even if you know the person, late notices have to be very consistent. Late fees have to be consistently charged. You can't give somebody a break on late fees and later expect to not have a problem with it, because they're going to hear about, the neighbors are going to hear that you gave somebody a break on the late fees. Or the next time they're late themselves, they're going to say, last time you didn't charge me, why are you charging me this time? So you have to be extremely consistent, and you cannot really give breaks for people. When it comes to evictions, you have to follow through to the letter of the law each time, and you have to complete the eviction on schedule, on time, because you never want to miss a week, or 2 or 3 weeks. You never want to see that you dropped the ball somewhere and didn't get something done as timely as it could have been. Because what happens is one bad tenant like that, or one bad person in your units, will teach all the other tenants where your weaknesses are. Not intentionally, but all the other tenants are watching, and they're going to see that it took an extra week to put up the late notice, and then you didn't even charge the late fees, and they're gonna learn from this that what they can get away with. And when it comes to multiple units, you cannot have a situation where the tenants see some weakness in your management. They have to know that everything is going to be exactly by the book. Now, when you own a single unit, for instance, we'll compare that. The tenants don't see each other, and they don't know what's going on the other side of town. When you gave somebody a break and they were 3 weeks late on the rent and you didn't charge them a late fee, and you wanted to be a nice guy, you wanted to help them out, whatever the situation is, your other tenants don't know that you did that. So they don't know that you have a weakness or a soft spot in your heart for single moms who didn't get all their money together to pay the rent, or maybe you took it in portions. Maybe you took half the rent and then 2 weeks later took the other half the rent, which you're welcome to do these things as a landlord for your single individual units. And it can be fine, and you can be a nice guy, and you can give people a break and always give them the benefit of the doubt. You can totally live like that and succeed like that. But when it comes to multiple units, that doesn't work. So don't plan on that kind of a strategy with multiple units. So that's why when it comes to multiple units, 9 times out of 10, you need a professional management company, professional that has many buildings maybe that they manage, and have all the systems already in place, and they're already professionals at collecting rent, posting late notices, doing evictions, whatever is necessary. And you need to learn from them how to manage your property when you take over a large property. Now, once they've managed your property for maybe a year or 2 or 3, if you feel some great desire to take over the management yourself, and you've learned from them how things work and how to do things, So then you may be in a position to take over the management, but I would not recommend it. If you haven't managed units before, I would not recommend you starting out with a multi-unit building. I would look for a property manager that's a professional and let them do the job, and again, you watch the way they do it and learn from them and maybe plan in the future to take it over. They need to be aggressive, they need to be consistent, they need to have complete equality in every single tenant, how they deal with every single situation. You know, problems can get magnified when you have multiple units. Let's say one of your tenants had some leak in the apartment or something, and there's mold starting to grow. And something like that happens, you have to, you know, bring someone in to look at the mold, and then before you know it, they're looking at the unit next door and the one next door, and before you know it, you got 3 or 4 or 5 units that you're dealing with a mold problem, which is definitely not something you want to get into. If you have a single house somewhere and there's mold, okay, so you're going to deal with it in the best way you know how, but there's not going to be 2 or 3 tenants getting together and figuring out, should we get a lawyer? Should we make sure that the mold company is doing everything by the book here? You just don't want those kinds of problems. Same thing with something like termites. Let's say you have termites over in one isolated place, and the way termites go, they'll want to termite the entire building. Maybe you have 8 units per building, maybe you have 3 or 4 buildings, and you just don't want to get into situations like that if you can avoid it. So again, with multiple units, you got to be very clean and very consistent and very strong in how things are handled. Okay, now we're going to go into the single unit and duplex units. I'm again combining the two. So a duplex is, we're going to call that, you know, in the single unit category. The management is much easier. Now with a duplex, the tenants would see how you're handling the tenant next door, but they generally, with single units, they don't know what you did to the guy down the street or 2 miles away on another house. They don't have any way to know what your style of management is, and they're not going to learn any weaknesses, and you can treat every person differently if you need to. It's much easier to purchase and mortgage any kind of a single unit or a duplex. It's a standard mortgage. In some cases, you could even call it owner occupied. Let's say you're going to buy a duplex, and you can say you're going to live in one half and rent the other half. So it's a much simpler, easier, better loan situation, and the whole process of purchasing is going to be a simpler process. It's also, when you buy single units, you're going to be diversified. Even though your money's still in real estate, you're on this side of town, you're on that side of town, you got 3 miles, you got the south and north, you got different areas of the town that is diversifying your real estate investment somewhat. So if there was let's say a major zoning change or some kind of situation that happened in a neighborhood, it's not going to possibly affect your other properties. So diversification is always good, and always a good thing to look for if you can. It's also much easier to sell a single unit or a duplex than it is a multi-unit property. You're selling to a whole different person. When it comes to selling a single unit, 9 times out of 10, you're selling to someone who's going to live there and be a homeowner. And maybe it's another rental property investor, but you can sell to anyone. When it comes to multi-unit properties, we talked about before, the only buyer for that is going to be another investor or investment company. So you're not selling to individuals. It's a harder sale. And the other thing with a single unit is you have some other flexibilities that exist. Things like you could have a relative live there, you could have a friend live there, you could do some sort of a short-term Airbnb rental there. So there's other potential flexible things that you can do when it comes to owning a single property. And it's much easier to be a landlord over a single property than it is multi-units. I hope you understand it understand that from this this talk that we just did. All right, I hope you learned some things, and please push the like button and subscribe, and you'll know when more videos that I produce come out to talk about being a landlord. And I hope that you have a great day as a landlord. Take care.